Christian Westen Chandler is quite possibly one of the most documented people in history. He is creator of Sonichu, the electric hedgehog Pokemon. And yes, that concept is as ridiculous as it sounds, and I assure you, Chris himself is way more ridiculous, so let's find out how ridiculous he is. Sonichu serves as a creative outlet for Christian, not only letting him live out his normal fantasies, but his sexual fantasies as well, as Chris is commonly depicting having sex with many other characters in the story, as Chris is widely respected by every character in the story. As well, many other female characters are depicted in a highly sexual manner. And, as well, Chris is the mayor of Quickville, where there are no elections, and essentially, Chris is the dictator, where Sonichu is essentially a supporting character after the third comic. Chris depicts many of his quote-unquote real-life enemies, such as Mary Lee Walsh, we'll get to her later, as one-dimensional villains who usually their sole goal is to make sure Chris does not get laid. At this time, Chris was discovered by 4chan, and I think you all know where this is going. Chris then had a page done on him on Encyclopedia Dramatica, a Wikipedia-style website that gives ironic pages for lolcows on the internet, such as Chris Chan. After this, knowledge of Chris Chan and his comics soared, involving many trolls soughting out to torment Chris himself, which resulted in not only sagas of trolls, but entire eras going through his entire life, as you see on the page here, as Chris Chan's life has essentially become an anime with all the sagas of trolls he has dealt with. Chris then declared his love quest, which his main goal was to find a boyfriend-free girl. So his best way to do this, of course, was to make an attraction sign advertising himself and post it all over his community college, where he goes into great detail about how you can't be black, you can't be fat, you can't be autistic, even though Chris himself is fat and autistic. Mary Lee Walsh, the dean of student discipline, after several attempts of making Chris stop, she put disciplinary action on him, which Chris then violently threatened her over the phone and on the internet. So then Chris was suspended from his community college for a year, and that is what resulted in Mary Lee Walsh being depicted as a one-dimensional villain who just wanted to cockblock Chris in the Sonichu comics. At the time, Chris's biggest hangout was the game place owned by Michael Snyder, where Chris volunteered as a Pokemon trading card game gym leader. He commonly hanged out there with his friend Megan Schroeder, who Chris constantly made advances towards, even though Megan kept persisting that she was not interested. But Chris would not let up, and this led to a very disturbing moment. With hopes of impressing Megan, Chris entered the Sony competition for Parappa the Rapper, promoting the character. Chris lost to Adam Stackhouse, but then declared foul play, claiming that Adam Stackhouse cheated. At the time, there were several trolls insisting that Chris was gay, so to prove he wasn't gay, he drew several pictures of himself in sexual acts with women, including Megan. When Megan figured out about this, she cut all ties with Chris. Chris confirmed it was Megan and not his fictional daughter Crystal, which is a whole thing in its own. Chris then came into contact with Blanca Weiss, a persona made by 3 different trolls who controlled her account. Blanca was the first of many sweethearts, which Christian calls girlfriends, to easily gain his trust, appear in the Sonichu comics, and mess with him for it. They requested his prized Sonichu medallion that he's constantly seen wearing. They take it, destroy it, pickle it, because Chris hates pickles, but then they say that Blanca's neighbor intercepted it. Chris believed them, and then continued to talk to Blanca until ties were cut off with Christian. Also in that time period, Chris was in contact with what's considered to be one of the biggest pioneers in Chris Chan trolling, Jimmy Hill. He claimed to be the original and true creator of Sonichu, and made a comic where Sonichu is depicted as gay, which highly angered Christian. And since he's gay, he wore a gay hat, had his hands at his side, and referred to every male as daddy. This brought out much of the homophobic nature in Chris, as he said that Sonichu should not be gay, and he cursed all the homos, saying many homophobic lines over this time period. Then appeared by far not only the most iconic troll of them all, but Chris's worst enemy, Clyde Cash. Clyde Cash had decided to go after Chris after Clyde Cash's brother had killed himself over Chris deciding he was not going to make Sonichu comics anymore. And then Chris reveled in the fact that he had the power to make a kid kill himself. Clyde set on his revenge path. Cash's first act in his reign of terror was to rape Christian's current girlfriend, Panda Halo. Also, he probably hacked into Sonichu.net like a million times, and every time he said, "Okay, Chris, I'll give it back, but you have to say you're gay on camera and put it on YouTube," which, as you know, Chris is probably the most homophobic person ever. Cash would portray himself in a Saturday morning cartoon-style villain, which fed into Chris's imagination of him, as Cash did appear in the comics as a villain. As well, he had a freaking pickle gun, which Chris obviously defeated Clyde Cash with ease every time, as Chris is our true and honest hero. Cash then depicted himself as the current president at the time of Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto, saying that they're interested in Sonic 2 as a comic. Cash had said that he would like Chris to meet him in DC, but Chris insisted that Miyamoto had to come to his house, blowing him off. Then they lost interest in the project. Also, which I find this hilarious, Miyamoto's lawyer was Jay-Z, which Chris just took in stride. Chris had also made a PowerPoint for Sonic 2, which depicted many of his characters having graphic sex, which would not be ideal for a freaking E-rated game. When Reggie broke the news to Chris, saying that we were not going to have sex in our video game, Chris then berated Reggie, saying, "What, are you a virgin? I bet you probably drink and smoke too." And that was the end of it. Then, Cash teamed up with other trolls, a real-life girl named Emily who went on a date with Christian, where Christian constantly tried to inappropriately touch her, even though she told him not to, and kiss her as well. But then a man in a pickle suit came and took Emily away, which stunned Chris, which made his hatred of pickles even more valid. Emily then went to live in Clyde Cash's mansion to be rehabilitated from Chris, hence why his name is Cash. In this time period as well, Cash formed the Miscreants, an organization who was designed to troll Chris. When Cash unveiled the Miscreants to Chris, he cited Chris's inappropriate treatment towards women, and stating that the Miscreants' only goal is to make sure Chris never gets laid. We now have quite possibly one of the most hated trolls out there, Blue Spike. Blue Spike was a 13-year-old boy pretending to be Julie, a girl from the fictional country of Mordonia that wanted to be Chris's sweetheart, which Chris obviously believed. This 13-year-old kid then sat through several cybersex sessions with Chris, one of which in which Chris's father walked in, and while Chris is also having sex with his sex doll, Officer Nasty. Chris then also told Julie about how he shoved a dildo up his ass with a condom on to test if he was gay or not. But then, Julie's brother Max, who's just Blue Spike, leaked all the images to the Miscreants, as it turned out that he is a member of the Miscreants as well. This angered Chris very much. Then the Miscreants said they kidnapped Julie and took her to their headquarters in Ohio, and that Chris needed to drive from his house to Virginia to Ohio in order to rescue Julie. Chris did this for no one to be there and drove back, and surprisingly was not very pissed off about this. Chris then had a conversation with Max, who was just Blue Spike, stating that if Chris wants to get his PSN account that he hacked, that he needs to shove his Sonic 2 medallion up his ass, what Chris actually did on video. It got to a point where the other Miscreants, including Clyde Cash, had to step in and remove Blue Spike. It was that bad. The guy who made this autistic virgin drive to Ohio had to step in and remove this troll. He was that bad. Ivy was yet again another troll who pretended to be Chris's sweetheart, not even using a real picture, just a graphic rendering of herself. She became a frequent part of the Sonic 2 comics, as Chris declared her his true love, stating that he loved her on multiple occasions, yet he cheated on her with another troll pretending to be Vanessa Hutchins, which Chris believed. Chris then made the wedding comic where him and Ivy got married in the comic, which Chris proposed to her online, in which then they had graphic sex in the comic, as displayed here. Ivy then broke up with Chris, and then later on, Chris found out she killed herself from Clyde Cash's trolling. And even though Chris said he loved her, he moved on from her death in about a day, which kind of makes no sense. Next up, we have quite possibly the most beloved troll, Liquid Chris. Liquid Chris copied many of Chris's mannerisms, claiming to be the true creator of Sonic 2, and his impression was spot on, I'm telling you right now. Chris was greatly angered by his paper medallion instead of clay, and yes, he was a villain in Sonic 2 comics. Chris then challenged Liquid to a karaoke competition in which they had judges vote. Obviously, they all voted for Liquid, and Liquid won. But the best part was how Liquid could play a real guitar, and he is a singer in real life. So he had this great singing voice. So he went from doing like an impression of Chris to like having like this smooth voice, which is definitely the best part of this. But Liquid had his own sweetheart, Casey, who got with Liquid for the sole reason that he is the true creator of Sonic 2, which angered Chris than ever before. So now, Chris tried to impersonate Liquid to get with Casey, which Casey went along with, but then discovered, which angered her greatly. Then Chris started talking to her because, he just wanted to talk to her, which really he wanted to smash. And the first question he asked her was, do you have any STDs? Which I think we all know what was on Chris's mind then. Casey even tried to help Chris, getting him to stop eating McDonald's, get a job, start exercising, which Chris obviously did not do because he only wanted to play video games, which he lied to Casey about, which angered her even more. Chris also made a comic where Liquid kidnapped Casey, even though she made it very clear that she was with Liquid. Chris then beat him up and then shot him in the legs like a psycho. There was also the father call, in which Casey's dad talked to Chris, burning him, calling him lazy, pretty much listing every character flaw that Chris has, which Chris denounces, stating, you're 27 and you don't have a job, you can't even work at Wendy's, which Chris then defended himself. Liquid and Casey then proceeded to get married, which sent Chris into a deep spiral for about 2 days. Then came the emergence of Alec Benson Leary, who was creator of the Asperchew comic, which parodied Chris in many ways, as he had a black best friend, which very much angered Chris, because Chris, of course, is very racist. Liquid Chris also appeared as a hero in the comic. Alec Benson Leary also was very intellectual and respectful of Chris, which Chris still did not like for some reason. And then Chris depicted in one of his comics Alec Benson Leary being brutally tortured by a 4-year-old girl at the point of having his dick ripped out, which, in my opinion, is pretty psychotic. Then came Jackie, who was yet again another sweetheart. She had her boyfriend at the time named Lars, who was black, which Chris obviously hated. Lars was addicted to boats, which was meant to mirror Chris's addiction to video games, which Chris did not know. Lars was based off Jiven from the Asperchew comics, copying many of his mannerisms in a stereotypical version of what Chris would think a black guy is. Chris then had a phone call for Lars where Lars actually liked Chris and said, and I quote, "You could fuck Jackie if you teach me about them video games." Also, before they came in contact with Chris, Lars, with an herb he got from Nigeria, because he's black and of course he could get herbs from Nigeria, killed Jackie's unborn baby. When Chris questioned Lars on this, Lars just said nah, and Chris dropped it. Chris was unwilling to give up video games for Jackie. But Lars, on the other hand, was willing to give up his boats to stay with Jackie. Chris then began to stalk the gameplays, which he had been banned from 2 years earlier. Him and his mother, then while there, tried to run over Michael Snyder with their car. They were taken to court, and Chris was given 1 year probation. This gave birth to the Christian Dark Ages, when interest and content by Chris became scarce. Around the time his relationship came to an end with Jackie, Chris got obsessed with being a tomgirl and cross-dressing, which eventually evolved into him going full transgender, with the new name Christine. And to this day, she is still transgender. Now, Christine Westen Chandler, even though the name is not legally changed. With the release of the brand new Sonic Boom game, Christine was enraged beyond belief that Sonic's arms has changed from blue to pale, to the point where she wanted people to go out and riot in the streets, like a civil rights movement. She then was kicked out of multiple Walmarts and maced an employee at GameStop over Sonic's arms. Then came by far the worst trolls. The Idea Guys were a group of evil trolls that financially and mentally extorted Chris. They brainwashed him to thinking the dimensional merge was true, an event where another dimension of characters will cross over, including Sonichu characters. They also blackmailed him with saying that Russian troops that have crossed over the dimensions were invading Quickville, the fictional world in which Sonichu takes place in. They essentially made him do stuff like Blue Spike every day, also telling him that if he drew a picture of him raping Sonichu, his daughter, Crystal Weston Chandler, will appear. They were evil to the point where Noel, owner of the Kiwi Farms, which is a website dedicated to trolling locals like Chris, had to step in and remove them and even reported them to the authorities. These guys were sick. It's still unknown what the actual hell Jacob Sockness is. He is another lolcow similar to Christian who has displayed erotic affection towards Christian, to say the very least. He has bought into the dimensional merge and has even creeped out Christian. It's like an inverse of what Christian's love quest usually is. Jacob Sockness is on his love quest and Christian is denying him, and he's pretty creepy. The saga recently restarted with Jacob Sockness trying to get his way to Virginia to meet Christian, which is scary. In the end, Christine definitely serves as an example of how not to act on the internet. While trolls like the Idea Guys are extremely evil, Liquid and Alec Benson Leary were pretty freaking harmless, especially since they played off of Chris's hypocrisy. The amount of info on this guy is just staggering. even being a thing called a comprehensive history of Christianity, which is 43 parts in, and is still only in 2014, with each video being about 41 minutes. So I've been Stridebreaker. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.